This happened in the summer of 2024, in a small town just outside of Asheville, North Carolina. At the time, I was 26, freshly out of a long relationship, and desperate for a change of scenery, when the opportunity came up to rent a modest, 2-bedroom house on Willow Creek Road. I jumped at it. The place was tucked away on a quiet cul-de-sac, about a mile from the main road. It wasn't fancy, just an aging 1-story house with pale blue siding, a screened-in porch, and a sagging wooden fence around the backyard, but it felt like the kind of place I could breathe in after the chaos of the past year. The landlord, a man in his 60s named Mr. Lang, met me at the property to hand over the keys. He was polite but brief, almost hurried, like he wanted to finish up and leave as soon as possible. I remember him saying something that struck me as odd though. At the time I brushed it off. As he was locking up behind himself, he muttered, "Keep the back door locked at night, always, even if you're home." I laughed nervously, assuming he just meant to be cautious, but his eyes didn't match his casual tone. They lingered on me a second too long, like he wanted to say more, but stopped himself. The first week went smoothly enough. The neighborhood was quiet, too quiet, if I'm being honest. The other houses along Willow Creek Road looked lived in, but I rarely saw anyone outside. No kids on bikes, no neighbors tending to their yards. The street felt like a row of shells, houses that had people inside but no life spilling out of them. At night, though the silence became unsettling, I'd hear distant noises, what I thought were animals, in the woods behind the property, but sometimes it sounded heavier, slower, footsteps maybe, pacing along the fence line. Jasper, my German shepherd, would perk up and growl low in his throat whenever the noises came, but by the time I looked, the yard was empty. The first real incident happened on a Wednesday night. I'd gone to bed around midnight, after binging a few episodes of True Detective. At exactly 3:07 a.m., I woke up to the sound of my back door handle rattling. Not once, not briefly, but over and over again, slow and deliberate, like someone was testing it. My heart slammed against my ribs. I grabbed the baseball bat I kept beside my bed and crept into the hallway. Jasper was already there, fur bristling, growling deep in his chest. I whispered his name, but he wouldn't look at me. His eyes were fixed on the shadow moving across the frosted glass pane of the back door. There was someone standing there. I froze. The rattling stopped, and then, silence. I held my breath, straining to hear, and that's when the whisper came, clear as day. Right on the other side of the door. "Open it." 2 words, low, drawn out, almost playful. My blood went cold. I dialed 911 with shaking hands. The dispatcher kept me on the line while 2 officers were sent to the house. When they arrived, I was still standing in the hallway gripping the bat, Jasper growling non-stop. The officers searched the yard, the woods, the street. They found nothing. No footprints, no damage to the door, nothing. One of them even joked, could have been the wind. But I knew what I heard. I told them about the whisper, the way the handle kept rattling. The officers exchanged a look, scribbled down my statement, and assured me they'd do an extra patrol. Then they left. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next morning, I noticed something the police had missed. On the outside of the back door, just below the handle, was a greasy handprint. Smudged into the glass, fingers spread wide. It wasn't mine. That was only the beginning. The night after the handprint, I didn't want to go home. I stayed late at the coffee shop where I worked, cleaning and re-cleaning the counters long after closing. I was stalling, hoping that by the time I got back to Willow Creek Road, exhaustion would knock me out before my brain had the chance to spiral. But the moment I pulled into the driveway, that familiar weight pressed down on me. The house looked normal, porch light glowing, curtains drawn, but it felt wrong, like it was holding its breath, waiting. Jasper refused to go straight in. Normally he'd bound up the porch steps, tail wagging, but this time he froze at the bottom, his ears pinned back. It took a full minute of coaxing before he followed me inside. That night, I locked everything twice. Deadbolt, chain, even pushed the kitchen chair under the back door handle. I told myself nothing could get in. I even left a lamp on in the hallway. Like a child afraid of the dark, it didn't matter. At 2:59 a.m., Jasper went rigid at the foot of the bed. His ears twitched, nose flaring, a low growl vibrating through his chest. I sat up instantly, heart hammering, and listened. The sound was faint at first, almost unnoticeable. A soft scrape against the wooden fence outside, long, slow, like nails dragging. I held my breath. The scraping paused, then started again, louder this time, circling the yard. I grabbed my phone and pulled up the live feed from the security camera I had installed just the day before. One pointing at the back porch, the other at the driveway. The screen lit up. Nothing. The yard was empty. Then the scraping stopped and was replaced by something worse. Knock, knock, knock. 3 sharp raps against the glass of the sliding door. Jasper barked so violently I thought he'd break his own throat. I swung the camera feed to the back door. For a split second, just long enough to make me question my sanity, I saw it. A figure. Tall, broad-shouldered, face obscured by what looked like a hood. He was leaning in close to the glass, his hand pressed flat against it, fingers long and pale, leaving another smear on the glass as he slowly dragged them down. Then the feed static filled the screen. When the picture came back, the porch was empty again. I dialed 911, voice shaking as I explained that someone was at my back door. The dispatcher sent a car, but by the time the same 2 officers arrived, the figure was long gone. They did another search, asked the same tired questions, and told me once again there wasn't much they could do. One of them even said, "Could just be a prank. Kids messing with you." I wanted to scream at him. Kids didn't whisper at 3 a.m. Kids didn't leave greasy handprints on locked doors. The officers left, and I was alone again. The rest of the night was quiet. Too quiet. I sat awake on the couch, gripping the bat, eyes fixed on the back door, until the first light of dawn broke through the blinds. When I finally stepped outside that morning, I noticed something I hadn't seen the night before. On the fence, carved deep into the wood with something sharp, were 3 words. "Let me in the morning." After finding those words carved into my fence, I called Mr. Lang, my landlord. I told him everything, the rattling door, the handprint, the figure on my camera, and now the message. There was a pause on the other end of the line, long enough that I thought the call had dropped. Finally, he sighed and said, "Don't stay. They're alone. Not at night." "What are you talking about?" I pressed. "You knew about this. Who's been coming here?" But Mr. Lang didn't answer. He muttered something about having to go and hung up. That afternoon, I drove to the library in town and pulled up old newspaper archives. I didn't even know what I was looking for, just some kind of explanation, but there was nothing. No break-ins on Willow Creek Road, no murders, no missing persons, just a blank, uneventful history. It should have comforted me. Instead, it made things worse. Because if there was no record, then what the hell was happening now? That night, I couldn't bring myself to sleep in the bedroom. I camped out in the living room with Jasper, a baseball bat by my side, and every light blazing. The TV played reruns of some cooking show, the noise a weak shield against the silence. For a while, it worked. Hours passed. Midnight came and went. At 2 a.m., my eyes finally began to close. Then it started. At first it sounded like faint tapping inside the walls. I thought maybe it was the pipes, the house settling, but the tapping grew louder, more deliberate. Tap, tap, tap. It was moving, following from the far corner of the living room wall, down toward the floor, then across, inching closer to where I sat frozen on the couch. Jasper went berserk. He lunged at the wall, teeth bared, snarling at something I couldn't see. His claws scraped the drywall as he tried to dig through, and then God help me, I heard it too. A voice, faint, muffled, like it was inside the wall itself. ... Open it, open it, ... Open it, ... Over and over again, the same two words. Whispers. Layered, like more than one person was speaking. I clamped my hands over my ears, but it didn't stop. The sound wasn't just through my ears anymore, it was vibrating inside my skull. Suddenly, the lamp beside me flickered, the TV cut to static, and the whole room went dark. I was blind. Jasper barked and lunged again, smashing into the coffee table, sending it crashing over. In the chaos, I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight. That's when I saw it, on the wall, just above where Jasper had been clawing. The paint was cracking, splintering, like something was pressing from the other side, straining to break through. I staggered backward, phone shaking in my hand, and then, as abruptly as it started, it stopped. The whispers, the tapping, the cracking in the wall. Gone. The lights flickered back on. The TV resumed its cheerful cooking show. If not for the deep gouges in the drywall and the overturned coffee table, I could have convinced myself it was all in my head. But then I saw the message on the wall, written in black, uneven smears that hadn't been there an hour earlier. For words this time, you can't hide. After what happened with the writing on the wall, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched every second. It wasn't paranoia anymore. It was instinct. I tried leaving the house the next day, thinking maybe I just needed distance. But even in town, I felt it. That presence clinging to me like a shadow. People at the grocery store gave me sidelong glances, whispering to each other when they thought I couldn't hear. Was it me? Did I look insane already? That night, I made a decision. If anything happened again, I'd leave. I'd grab Jasper, pack the car, and drive until the tank ran dry. But the house had other plans. Around 3:15 a.m., Jasper jolted awake. His head snapped toward the hallway, ears sharp, body stiff as a board. I followed his gaze. The hallway light was still on, but something was moving at the far end, not a shadow, not a trick of my eyes. It was a silhouette, tall, unmoving, perfectly still at the corner where the hallway turned, toward my bedroom. I froze. My mouth went dry. The figure didn't move, didn't breathe, just stood there, watching. Jasper barked, once sharp, guttural, then tore down the hallway, launching himself at the intruder. The lights flickered and went out. All I heard was Jasper's growl echoing into the dark, then a yelp, high-pitched, painful, cut off so suddenly, it felt like my heart stopped with it. Jasper, I screamed. Fumbling for my phone, flashlight, the beam lit up the hallway. Empty, no. Figure, no Jasper. My dog was gone. I tore through the house, searching every room, every closet, under every bed. I ran to the backyard, barefoot, screaming his name into the night. Nothing. The yard was still, the woods beyond silent. It was like he'd been swallowed whole, shaking. I called 911 again, barely able to form words through my sobs. The same officer arrived, this time alone. He looked tired, irritated, like he already didn't believe a word before I opened my mouth. A dog can run off, he said flatly, jotting notes on his clipboard. Fence is old. He probably squeezed through, somewhere. I dragged him to the hallway, pointing to the exact spot where the figure stood. There was someone here. He attacked Jasper. He's still in this house. I know it. The officer swept the house once more. No footprints, no forced entry. Nothing. When he left, I was alone again. Alone and without Jasper, but not for long, because at dawn, as the sun began to rise, I heard scratching at the back door. My heart leapt. I ran to it, praying it was Jasper, and it was Stardust. He was standing there on the porch, staring at me through the glass. But something was wrong. His eyes, They weren't Jasper's eyes anymore. They were wide, unblinking, glossy, almost human, and his mouth hung open in a silent snarl, drool dripping from his jaw, as if he'd been standing there for hours. Then he tilted his head, slowly, deliberately, and whispered in a voice that wasn't his, "Let me in." I didn't open the door. God help me. I almost did. I almost reached for the handle when I saw Jasper's shape standing there, whining, pawing gently at the glass. But then he spoke again. Let me in. Not a bark, not a whimper. Words, human words. I stumbled back, bile rising in my throat. Jasper pressed his face closer to the glass, fogging it with each heavy breath. His lips peeled back, stretching into something that wasn't quite a snarl, wasn't quite a smile. Let me in. Over and over, louder each time. The voice distorted, cracking, like multiple voices were overlapping. Male, female, young, old. The glass began to tremble beneath his paws, vibrating as though something was trying to push through. I grabbed the baseball bat and screamed at him to stop, but he didn't move, didn't blink. Then his body convulsed, violently, his spine arched, limbs twisting at unnatural angles. With a sickening crack, his head snapped backward, so far it almost touched his shoulders. And yet he was still standing, still staring, still whispering, "Let me in." The glass fractured. A spiderweb crack spread across the sliding door, each word punctuated with another shudder. I bolted up the stairs, into the bedroom, slamming the door and shoving the dresser against it. My hands shook so badly, I could barely dial 911. The phone rang once, twice, then silence. No operator, no static, just silence. And then, through the phone, the same voice hissed, "Let me in." I dropped it like it was burning. That's when the pounding started. Not at the back door anymore, at the front. Heavy fists slamming into the wood so hard the frame rattled. I ran to the window and looked out. It wasn't just Jasper. There were others, dozens of them, standing in the yard, shoulder to shoulder, faces pale and blurred like static on a TV screen. Every one of them had the same wide, unblinking eyes. Every one of them moved their lips in perfect unison. "Let me in. Let me in. Let me in." The chant filled the night, rising and falling like waves. The sound wasn't just outside anymore, it was inside my skull, vibrating in my teeth, my bones. I clutched my head and screamed, but it didn't drown them out. The walls themselves seemed to pulse with the sound, the drywall cracking in thin, jagged lines that spread like veins. I didn't know what to do. I couldn't fight them. I couldn't run. And then, as suddenly as it began, it stopped. The pounding ceased. The chanting faded. I crawled to the window again. The yard was empty. Everything was gone, except Jasper. He was sitting at the edge of the driveway, perfectly still, head tilted, eyes locked on my window, waiting, and though the night was silent, I swear I could still hear his voice, whispering softly, patiently, "You'll let me in eventually." I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. Every creak of the house felt deliberate. Every shadow stretched too long. Jasper hadn't moved from the edge of the driveway. Hours passed on, crept over the trees, and still he sat, staring. I pulled the curtains shut by late morning. Exhaustion pushed me to desperation. I needed answers. If I couldn't trust the landlord, and the police thought I was insane, then I'd dig for the truth myself. The town library's archive room smelled like dust and mildew, a relic itself. I pored over rolls of microfilm, scanning headlines from decades past. Nothing. Break-ins, fires, car crashes, all routine. I almost gave up until I noticed something strange. The years were missing. Not all of them, but huge chunks. 1974, 1989, 2003. Gone. No newspapers on record. As if someone had sliced them out with a razor blade. I asked the librarian about it. She stiffened, glanced over her shoulder, then lowered her voice. "You're renting that place, aren't you?" The words chilled me. I hadn't told her where I lived. "What happened there?" I demanded. She hesitated, wringing her hands. "People don't like to talk about it. Things that happened, things that kept happening." "Like what?" Her eyes darted toward the empty back corner of the archive room, where the fluorescent lights flickered. She leaned closer, whispering, "Families vanish, whole families. No signs of struggle, no bodies. They just disappear. Always from that house." I felt the blood drain from my face. "When? Every 20 years, she murmured. "Always on the same land. Always the same house." My stomach twisted. 1974, 1989, 2009, and now -22, for before I could press her further, a loud thud echoed through the archive room, like a book dropping. Both of us jumped. She clutched my arm, eyes wide. "You shouldn't be here," she hissed. "It doesn't like people asking questions." I glanced back at the corner where the lights flickered again. For a split second, only a blink, I swore I saw someone standing there, tall, still watching. But when I looked again, the corner was empty. I drove home in silence, gripping the wheels so hard my knuckles turned white. When I pulled into the driveway, Jasper was gone. For the first time in days, relief washed over me. Maybe it was over. Maybe he'd moved on. But when I stepped inside, the house was different. The air felt heavier. The walls seemed closer, and carved deep into the living room wall, in the same jagged scrawl as before, were 5 new words. "I tease your turn now." I couldn't breathe. The words carved into the wall felt like they were seared into my skin. "It's your turn now." The wood was splintered, fresh, like it had just been written, minutes before I walked in, but I hadn't left the house unlocked. I ran my hands along the grooves, splinters biting into my fingertips. This wasn't some prank. Someone had been inside. Someone was still inside. That night, I dragged the dresser in front of my bedroom door again. I held the bat in my lap, sitting on the floor, staring at the shadows until my eyes burned. Sometime after 2 a.m., the sound began, not pounding this time, not scratching, breathing, deep, wet, ragged breaths coming from inside the bedroom closet. I froze, every nerve screaming. Slowly, I turned the flashlight on my phone and pointed it toward the closet door. The breathing grew louder, like it knew I was listening. The door creaked, just a fraction of an inch, but enough to see the darkness inside shift. Then, a voice, low, mocking, familiar. "Son of a bitch, you actually stayed." It was my own voice. I staggered back, phone clattering to the floor. The flashlight beam rolled across the carpet, catching something slithering out from the closet. Not a person, not an animal, a shape, crawling, contorting, its limbs bent like broken branches, its skin pale and stretched thin as paper, and where its face should have been it was my face, twisted, smiling, eyes hollow. The thing dragged itself toward me, bones snapping with every movement. Its grin widened, teeth too sharp, too many. I swung the bat, hard. It passed straight through the thing like smoke. But the sound, oh God, the sound was real. A wet crack, as if I'd hit raw meat. My arms trembled as the bat grew slick, dripping. Something dark onto the carpet. The thing lunged. I don't remember screaming, but my throat ached from it. I grabbed the phone, scrambled for the door, shoved the dresser aside, and bolted into the hallway. The house was alive. The walls shuddered with whispers. Dozens of voices overlapping. Floors bulged under my feet, like something beneath was trying to claw its way out. Doors slammed one after another, hurting me toward the staircase. I stumbled down, crashing into the living room. The carvings on the wall were changing, right before my eyes. Letters forming, words stretching into sentences. "You can't leave. You're ours." The front door burst open. Wind howled inside, whipping furniture across the room. And standing there, silhouetted in the doorway, was Jasper. Not the Jasper I knew. His fur hung in clumps, skin peeling in strips. His body sagged, broken, like a marionette held by invisible strings. And his eyes, those human eyes, were fixed on me. He tilted his head, that same awful angle, and said in my voice this time, "Welcome home." I ran not up, not down, out, straight through the front door, past Jasper's broken shape. His head snapped toward me as I bolted into the yard, the night air slicing into my lungs. The gravel crunched under my shoes. The mailbox came into view. The street. Freedom. But when I reached the end of the driveway, my stomach dropped. There was no street, just trees, endless black, whispering trees, stretching in every direction. I spun around. The house was right behind me, looming taller than it ever had, its windows glowing faintly like open eyes. No. I ran again, deeper into the woods, branches slashing at my face and arms. The further I went, the darker it became. My flashlight flickered, then died, and then, through the suffocating dark, I saw it, the house, standing there, waiting, exactly as I'd left it. I collapsed to my knees, bile rising in my throat. I hadn't turned around. I hadn't circled back. The house had followed me. My chest tightened as a sound drifted through the trees. Laughter, not one voice, hundreds, twisting, layered, echoing, in my skull until it was impossible to tell if it was coming from outside or inside my own head. I stumbled back inside, not out of choice, but because every path led me there. My legs carried me over the threshold before I even realized it. The air was colder now, thick, and on the wall, new words carved deep enough to ooze fresh blood. Stop running. I backed away, heart pounding, when the floor beneath me buckled, would split open, revealing a gap, a crawl space I'd never seen before. From the darkness below, something shifted, something alive. I shone my dying flashlight into the opening. For a moment, I wished it had stayed dark. Bones, dozens, hundreds, twisted skeletons stacked like firewood, jaws locked in eternal screams. Some small, too small, and woven between them were fresh shapes. Not bones, not corpses, bodies, breathing shallowly, eyes open, milky and blind, staring straight at me. They whispered in unison, lips moving as if pulled by invisible threads. Join us. The floorboards slammed shut, nearly crushing my fingers. The whispers didn't stop. Now they were in the walls, the ceiling, inside my head. I clutched my skull, falling to the floor, sobbing when I felt it, a hand, cold, thin, sliding up my arm. I jerked back, but there was no one there. Only the words, forming again on the wall, faster this time, carved as if by invisible claws. You belong here. And when I looked to the window, Jasper was there again, sitting, smiling, waiting. I don't remember falling asleep, but I woke on the living room floor, bat still in my hand, blood dried on my knuckles. The house was silent, too silent, until I realized, not silent, breathing. The walls were breathing, expanding, contracting, like lungs. I staggered up, dizzy, my head pounding. The whispering voices hadn't stopped. They'd just changed. They weren't pleading anymore. They were chanting, repeating one word, over and over. Stay, stay, stay. I stumbled into the kitchen. The window above the sink was fogged, but there was something written in the condensation. 4 letters. Help. My chest tightened. Someone else had been here. Maybe still was. I ripped open cabinets, drawers, nothing. But when I pulled the fridge door open, bile rose in my throat. Not food, not shelves. A tunnel, a narrow passage dug into the earth, lined with dirt and splintered wood, leading down into blackness. The smell hit me like a fistrat, and metal, old blood soaked into the soil. I should have run. but my feet moved anyway. Down, crawling into the suffocating dark. Walls brushing my shoulders. The tunnel twisted until it opened into a chamber. And in that chamber, Christ, the missing families, their photos, yellowed and curling, plastered across the dirt walls. Faces smiling in captured moments, birthday cakes, Christmas mornings, summer barbecues, families erased from history. In the center of the chamber stood a table, not wood, not stone, bone, a table built from human ribs and femurs, lashed together with sinew, and on it, a book, not paper, not leather, something else, something that pulsed, faintly, like it was alive. My hands shook as I reached for it. The whispers in my head grew louder, angry, like they didn't want me touching it. But I had to know. The moment I opened it, my vision split. I wasn't in the chamber anymore. I was somewhere else. I saw the families, each 20 years apart, moving into the house. I saw the children vanish first, their screams swallowed by the walls. I saw the parents dragged beneath the floor, their bodies split apart, their souls fed to something vast and hungry that lived beneath the foundations, and then my own reflection in the pages, standing in the house, holding the book, watching myself, as if this had already happened, as if it was always going to happen. I dropped the book. My hands were covered in blood, not mine, fresh, sticky, warm. The walls shook violently, dirt raining down from the ceiling. Something was waking. From the darkness behind me, a voice spoke. Not Jasper, not the whispers, a child's voice. Please, don't let it take us again. I turned, and dozens of pale, hollow-eyed children stared back at me from the shadows. The children's eyes glowed faintly in the dark, their whispers overlapping into one voice. It's hungry. Always hungry. You have to feed it. My stomach lurched. No, I'm not. But before I could finish, the earth beneath my feet split open. The chamber collapsed, swallowing me whole. I fell, screaming, until I landed hard on stone. I was in a room I'd never seen before. The true foundation of the house. The walls pulsed like flesh, wet and glistening. Veins ran across them, thick with something black pumping through. The ceiling stretched impossibly high, disappearing into shadow, and in the center was an altar. Jasper lay upon it, but it wasn't Jasper anymore. His body twitched and split, ribs cracking open like a rotten fruit. Something vast and formless pushed its way out, its limbs bending in ways bones should never bend. Its face flickering between my own and the faces of every missing family I'd seen. It spoke without moving its mouth. You came back. You always do. My knees buckled. What are you? The thing smiled with 100 mouths. Home. The walls shook violently. Screams echoed. Some human, some animal, some not of this world at all. The altar split, and from its cracks, hands, hundreds of them, shot out, grasping at me, pulling me closer. I fought. I swung the bat, screamed until my throat tore, but every strike only sank me deeper. Every blow was absorbed like the house itself was drinking my strength. And then, the book appeared again, right at my feet, its pages flapping wildly in the storm of whispers. The children's voices rang out, desperate. Choose, choose. I grabbed the book with bloodied hands. The pages bled as I opened them, words carving themselves into the flesh-like parchment. 2 sentences? Feed it and live. Fight it and join the rest. The walls closed in, the altar cracked apart. Jasper's twisted face leaned close, wearing my smile. You already know what you are. My chest heaved, my vision blurred, and then I screamed, slamming the book shut. Darkness swallowed everything. I woke up in my bed. Morning light streamed through the curtains. Birds sang outside. The house was quiet, normal. For a moment, I almost believed it had been a dream, until I walked to the bathroom and saw the mirror. My reflection smiled before I did.